Welcome everybody to the Community Economic Development Committee meeting. I'm John Weddleton.
I'm Pete Peterson.
Christopher Constantine.
Kathy Gleason, Trinity Community Council.
Roy Money, Trinity Community Council.
Sean Odell, Planning. Jay Whitfield, Planning.
Galaxine, lawyer.
James Martin, Secret Garden, Cannabis.
Kurt Singh, planning.
Phil Steyer, GDX Electric.
Amy DeBoski. Nancy Honest, Clerk's Office.
Brian Yell, Planning Department.
Dean on the line. All right, thanks. So, got our agendas in front of us. Anybody want any changes? We're good? Okay, so you want to start off with Secret Garden, cultivation, and I guess we'll go through them one at a time. We're done if should we do each one separate? Okay, Mandy, you want to start?
So for Secret Garden Cannabis, with their cultivation license, all of the general requirements were addressed in their operating plan. There wasn't any taxes, fees, or fines found due, and there weren't any extra recommended conditions for the license.
All right, thanks. And Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant, James Thornton, Secret Garden Cannabis, is applying for a special land use permit. This one would be for the marijuana cultivation facility. It's going to encompass 16,921 square feet, and the establishment will be occupying a unit within an existing commercial use building located within a B3 district. And in accordance with the requirements of Title 21, there will be a attached and co-located retail establishment, and of course we'll be hearing that application next. The petition site is located southeast of the intersection of Gamble Street and East 15th Avenue. And the closest projected land use is a religious assembly located approximately 1,300 feet away, essentially in accordance with the criteria of Title 21. The proposed site lacks compliant landscaping, pedestrian access, and sufficient snow storage. To address these issues, staff has placed conditions on each license and special land use permit on an AR. Additionally, as of the right of the staff packet, the petitioner has not applied for a change of use permit with development services. This is also addressed as a condition of approval in the assembly resolution. That provided site plan do not show any major alterations to the building facade or structure that would make it of similar character, scale, or size when compared to surrounding structures. And the planning department recommends approval of the special land use permit subject to the conditions as stated in the staff report.
All right, thank you. Any comments?
Well, I would suggest that the petitioner has been before the Fairview Community Council a number of times over the last several months and done their due diligence in terms of making a relationship and establishing connection and affiliation with that community. And so the community had no objection. They were actually quite supportive of the discussion. And so that's.
Well, they're taking over the old Dooley building, and so it's obviously been occupied there for a long, long time. So have to repurpose that building, and obviously it's a real visible location right there. And so it keeps talking about parking in here. How many spaces are there really there?
I have a few.
I mean, it says like 20 or something, but I keep driving by there and I keep looking, where could there possibly be 20 spaces?
There are some more around the rear.
Oh, there are some around back?
Page 61 of your packet.
The whole area that's grassed off.
Page 61?
I think this is, we have the same packet, yes, we do.
I think it's the last page, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have quite a bit of parking.
Yeah, I guess I didn't see that. All right.
There is currently a grass hill.
That's changed.
We have to put some blacktop down there. Okay. All right. That's all that I can think of, John. Thanks.
I didn't have any issues with the applicant or anything that I read, but I wanted to really point out, I love how the planning department is now putting what the closest separation distance or what the closest protected land use is. It makes my whole mantra a lot easier. I don't have to nag and nag and nag. So I really, really appreciate that. I think a great improvement for me. So thank you very much for doing that.
I do have a quick question for you. What's the church that you counted? Do you know?
Top of my head, I can't think of
2, so 0.2 is maybe a little, is that less than 13 weeks, maybe? I don't know. That's the closest one we found.
Yeah, and there's Greater Friendship is, I think, the next closest one, but that's definitely outside the distance. Okay, thank you.
So I had a couple of points, just on the conditions. Because you say you have 40 parking spots, and they said that's how many are required. But if you put in the landscaping, 5% for snow storage and a loading berth, then what? Is that?
So we're applying for non-conforming use. I'm sorry, I think that was.
Correct, yes. So the way that I have it worded in the condition is that you're not allowed to get non-conforming roads for snow storage or pedestrian access, but you can get them for lack of landscaping, and that they're pursuing that non-conforming determination right now. It's very likely that they're going to get those non-conforming rights, so it shouldn't impact the parking on the front lot, and it shouldn't impact the rear lot because that's not flooding the rights of the community. It's not flooding 15th Avenue.
It would wipe out that whole tier of parking if they had.
Correct. Correct, and with 5% for snow storage, they may need to reorient the parking, but that'll be handled as a revised site plan once they show the snow storage.
Okay. Then your hours, you're 24/7.
Well, we have from 8 a.m. to midnight.
Well, it's setting at 12 a.m. to 12 a.m.
Cultivation, excuse me, yes.
Because somebody's probably gonna be there, I mean, it's just cultivation, so it's not gonna be open to the public, so somebody might probably be there 24 something.
Sure. Then you had one person wrote in, I guess he's got an apartment building nearby. Did you talk to him?
Who again?
Shane Oswowski?
We did not talk to him, no.
No.
I mean, I read his comment and you got apartment buildings with kids and families, that's kind of the whole.
I did walk the neighborhood on a couple occasions. I did not make contact with that gentleman.
Yeah, James went door to door and just introduced himself, said what he's gonna be doing, asked if they have any concerns, and I don't think he got to his law office, because I don't think that's actually in the area.
I think he's at the Diamond Center.
Yeah, so I'm not
Oh,
sure exactly where
yeah.
he's at in your area.
Represents properties
Yeah.
there, that sort of.
I think he's on 16th Ave.
Sounds like he owns an apartment building.
Mhm.
Yes, that's down below by the Sullivan Arena. And so, yeah.
Oh, so you know.
Well, just by looking at the address, yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
The one thing I would just caution, because this was one who does some B3 grant. This has been one of my major concerns from the beginning. The closer you get to residential, the more conflict you're going to have. And that's why I think sometimes the separation distances are really important. But as the business operator, this is probably going to be one of the most proactive things you're going to have to do. And it sounds like you're doing everything right, engaging the community council and all that. But that's where we'll have the biggest conflicts, in my opinion, is the closer you get to residential. We saw it with the restaurant, with Rustic Goat, and that's a restaurant, right? But the issue was parking. The issue was overwhelming the neighborhood because they were so popular. It was a big problem, actually. So I would just caution you to be very receptive to some of the neighbors if you start realizing that, because I think that's going to be probably one of our biggest areas of contention, is the closer we push these businesses towards residential.
I would just kind of, if I might add, that in this particular location, there's a 4-lane highway, a massive traffic flow, and then there's also 2 major cutoffs from the arena in between the residential property and this use. And so there's not really a strong connection between that location and the use that's being proposed. It's Gamble Street is a huge,
I know
huge
exactly.
area.
Yeah, I know exactly where it is. And this one, and that's part of the reason why, some of the decrease, I think I'll be way more,
Easy.
yeah, this was just basically an informational warning, but it's just because they're zoning, but honestly, I wouldn't try to walk across that street.
But I think
Yeah,
it
I have
sounds like
plans.
a good thing to keep in mind with like dense areas, because, if there's kids nearby, churches are obviously nearby, we need to make sure that we're really keeping a handle on the smell, which has been a problem in other parts of the state.
Yeah, especially we have a problem here in Acres with one particular location that keeps propping up their doors. they're a cultivation facility and they keep propping open their doors. I mean, that's just stupid, to be honest. There's no other way to say it. Yeah, you know what exactly.
Yeah,
what I'm talking
they
about.
got an NOV and they did different carbon filters and now the door's closed.
Well, and you have all these filters, you spend all this money to
Yeah,
try to, I mean, come on now.
I know.
Lay off the ganja for a day or two to make a good decision.
Well, the primary smell at that location is exhaust. And it's a tremendous, huge volume of exhaust. And so, like I've said,
You're talking exhaustive view.
yes, at the Wild Scoots Test Kitchen right there, 15th and Gamble Street. And
Oh, my God.
the prevailing and overwhelming scent is car exhaust.
Okay, so what do we do with this?
I make a recommendation for approval.
I'll second it.
Okay. No objection? So have you been through this, so, I'm sure Janet's coaching, but we can make a recommendation at the meeting, the Tuesday meeting, so it's not, but there's 11 of us that will vote, so it'd be nice if you were there,
Oh,
in case there were questions.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's move on to the retail, right? Or Mandy, what? Retail.
So for the Secret Garden Cannabis Retail License, their operating plan covered all of the general requirements for the license. Again, no taxes, fees, or fines were found due, and this one did not have any recommended added conditions either.
Great, thank you. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief on this one because there's a lot of overlap with the previous case here. Secret Garden Cannabis is applying for a special license permit for marijuana retail establishment that will encompass 2,205 square feet. That will be attached and co-located with the previous case. And be occupying a unit within the same building within the B3 district, located in the southeast intersection of Gamble Street and Dixon Avenue. Closest protected land use, of course, is approximately 1,500 feet away as the religious assembly. And with the conditions of approval for this case, again, it'd be the same as the last case. The site lacks compliant landscaping, pedestrian access, and sufficient snow storage, as well as a lack of a change of use permit with development services that has not been applied for yet. Provided site plans do not show any alterations to the building facade or structure that make it of similar character, scale, or size when compared to surrounding structures. And the planning department recommends approval of the special use permit subject to the conditions as stated in the staff report.
Thanks. Thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, just the same. This came and have been in front of the Derby Community Council, done the due diligence. The community, I didn't hear any voice against it at their meeting or any of their meetings, so they supported, I support it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so you're also planning a manufacturing facility and it's going to be in the same building? And so that's going to be separated from the cultivation and retail?
Oh, yeah, it'll be its own little contained situation.
All right. Yeah, because I'm looking at the maps and drawings trying to figure out where exactly that part of the
Right, so the
business is
building,
going to be.
building 3 on the right-hand side or the west side of our licensed premises.
All right, I see it down there.
And you can kind of see the separation on page 104 and 105.
Yeah, I just noticed.
Okay.
You guys need color.
They're easier when you.
Oh, yeah, let's see, so on page 104, yeah, thanks, Mandy, that's way better.
Yeah.
So there's one secured entrance to that, and it will be completely secure.
You would know that they're all owned by the same company, so there's no changing of ownerships that wouldn't be consistent across the board. So Secret Garden owns all 3 of the licenses, which is actually Axion doing business as Secret Garden. So if any owners change, it would affect all 3 licenses at once. So you would know that.
Great, thank you.
Oh, I would just point out, I did a little misprint on the, I said 12 p.m., not 12 a.m., because I think 8 to 12 p.m. would be 8 till noon, 8 to 12 a.m. for the retail. Is that okay? I mean, just.
We get on the stage here.
Amy?
Well, I just want to say this one more time to emphasize how much I love the department listening to separated closest protected land use. how much I love that. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate it very much. But again, like the other one, I have no concerns with this one. Obviously, the operator recognizes he's gone door to door. That to me is very impressive. I have seen a lot of these operators really go above and beyond to try to engage the community, and that's exactly what we wanted. So just thank you for doing that. And I'll wait to meet you to see if you have any concerns, but then I would recommend approval on this one.
You have a high bar because Will and Indian got 90 signatures from neighbors in Indian. Even the first cultivation, report, it was pretty amazing. He covered, how many people live down south of Cutie?
Yeah, I didn't get that many doors knocked on, that's for sure.
Pretty impressive.
My percentage does
I had a couple small things. It did say here your floor plan that you submitted to the city is different than the state. And is that an issue to correct that?
It's handled in the staff packet, and all the square footage is reported correctly in the staff packet. The one discrepancy was that the plans submitted to the state point out the manufacturing space. The plans that were submitted to us do not point out that manufacturing space.
But there was one, I think, in the state had the retail in a totally different part of the building.
I don't believe so.
Let me look.
No, it's all in the same corner.
And by the time we get done with non-conforming rights and whatnot, there's gonna be a new site plan that we're gonna have to say, okay, here, city, and also, okay, here, state. And city has to sign off on anything we send to the state first, so.
If you go to page 69, it shows retail in the, what I think is the northeast part of the building here, whereas you've got it on everything else in the kind of westernmost part of the building. Am I right?
It's all in the same corner.
Same little L. Somebody did the L.
What's the one? That's the 15th.
It shows here on the position.
Same little L.
There you go.
104 and page 69.
Sweet one.
Maybe the direction of the page. No, it's just.
Yeah, they'd just be flipped on the change.
If you've seen it, so.
This is my problem, reading it on an iPad. Okay, so it's good.
Consistent across both packets.
Yeah, my fault. Who makes iPad? Is that Apple? Apple's. Okay, you got it. And then, we hit again, this mentions the potential screening of a dumpster that you may need. And that takes up
That's
2 or 3
that's-
parking spots again. So if you have to do a loading berth, potentially, maybe landscape, that may be clear. Maybe the sidewalk, I don't know where that would go. And that starts eating up the parking. The question is, we made this a special use, and it might be worth looking at what is the real parking at some point. Now that we're getting some experience, it's not a normal retail. You don't really have people hanging out for half an hour at these things. They shop around looking at 1,000 things. They come in, you got 30 or 40 products. You're done pretty quick, so the turnover is really fast. But it seems we've been tripping over parking at these places forever. Are we at a point where we could evaluate the real parking needs for
I can follow up with the municipal traffic engineer and see if she would entertain a parking study for what the time frame for that would be, or appropriate time.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get something realistic. What's your sense? Have you
I haven't
watched
seen
it
any
all?
parking issues, with, some issues that don't have to do with parking, that makes sense. I haven't seen any actual spaces be completely full that people are parking across the street and parking on the road and stuff like that. I'm not, downtown, you can't really opine on that because they don't have parking anyways. But from all the shots that I've been seeing, it's really like a 15-minute ticket time. And I've been asking clients to kind of think about how long is it taking people when they walk in the door, check the ID, get through the line, get out the door, how long is it taking? It's from my feedback I'm getting, it's about 15 minutes. know, it's tough. It seems to be working okay, and there doesn't seem to be packed. And I go drive past stores and I don't see packed, which then I get nervous. I'm like, whoa, why isn't the parking lot's packed? But people just tell me, you know, it's like a steady stream, in and out, in and out, in and out. So, you know, it could change if we ever do get on-site consumption, but that's, you know, maybe that's a whole other discussion when it comes to parking. Maybe that's a separate discussion for if you're going to do on-site consumption with different parking requirements, like a bar or a restaurant would. But so far, no. So far, we haven't gotten anything.
I think it's important to point out that marijuana parking requirements are based off of the general retail or general, you know, warehousing storage. So in order to truly evaluate the parking need there, we have to break it out into its own category and establish a parking standard for marijuana in and of itself. So, and we can certainly look at that if it becomes an issue and we need to, you know, potentially reduce the parking requirements. We want to have marijuana to its own category.
But we broke it out.
Yeah, we are. I was just going to say,
We broke it up-
we have our
well,
category.
from a parking perspective, it falls under general retail or general warehousing. So.
And I think though, John, that's your point, is that at some point it's reasonable to perform an analysis, and if the parking requirements are absurd relative to the actual usage, then we should ask the question, what is the actual flow of cars to these properties? So that our policies match reality instead of creating more empty parking lots in the middle of our commercial districts, which isn't what we want to see.
And actually, you know, since we have 40 days stored up of video surveillance at any given time for all these retail stores, you could actually get that surveillance from the parking area because we have it as required to be. And you could, you know, fast forward and see if there's really any issues, and that way you don't guess if you're interested.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Kathy?
Is it appropriate for me to speak?
Sure, why not?
Thank you. I'm not speaking for Trinity Community Council on this. Just my observation and hearing this discussion, it concerns me a little about the exemption as far as landscaping requirements. But then it ties in with this discussion about parking and how many spaces do you really need. So if you actually enact, in reality, you don't need nearly as many spaces as what's required by code, you would have room for landscaping. And so I think they're tied together, and I would hate to see a precedent being set that, oh yeah, we're going to ask for an exemption about the landscaping because we need the parking. And, you know, I didn't want to say anything on this because, you know, there's really not much of any landscaping at that location now for the previous retailers that were there. So, didn't want to come down on harm you, but overall, I think we need to think about there's landscaping requirements for a reason. It's for aesthetics and beautification and buffering and everything.
We're very excited. We have
I'd rather have landscaping than unused parking requirements or overly, you know.
Wasteful.
And so I think that that's a really good discussion, and the planning department we should look at that.
Plus, landscaping can help with smell control. You know, certain plants can mitigate the smell there too.
There's ample landscaping just down the hill.
Wrong time, wrong side. And I think though that any discussion of a non-conforming use would go back to the council. They would have an opinion on, they would like to see, similar to Kathy's concern, some appropriate measures taken to ensure that there is an improvement to the look and feel. If it's not exactly to the standards of the South 21, at least to reasonable improvements in the neighborhood. And so that's a conversation that's important to have relative to this applicant and to the broader question of parking versus landscaping.
It would be nice if it was more flexible, that we could sit and negotiate like with the community council, like what's more important, like a bunch of parking spaces or really pretty trees, and bring that back to the assembly as maybe part of an MOU discussion. I don't know, just something.
And we talked a little bit about that in our community council meetings, which was exciting for me because that's the kind of question I'd like to get.
And I believe in their business, there's a landscape architect. So I think the community was
She's already hard at work.
really pretty clearly happy with
Things.
their efforts.
Sustainable in Alaska type plans and different things.
Anything else?
I just have to think of one thing. I see Phil here, but so have you got your electric situation
Yes.
squared away? Because I think the ML&P said you needed an additional upgrade or something. Has that been finished or?
Oh, finished, now we want to get through this, you guys. first, because, you know, we're not gonna put a bunch of money in unless we get through the assembly, because otherwise we're dead in the water.
I just remember seeing that in there.
Yeah, yeah, but we definitely got the quote, and our engineering team is working on that in the plans, and so once we're through this process and get the green light, then that's when that work starts.
That was one of the first things my engineer looked into was whether or not we'd be able to operate in this location. So
Great, thank you.
So we had a motion to approve.
Second.
Any opposition? Excellent. Thank you. Good luck.
thank you very much.
Mandy, kind of a small point, but you can't have cultivation in B3 unless you have retail co-located there.
Right.
So just as a tiny thing, when we're ordering this on the agenda, let's do the retail, then it's come first.
Okay. I kind of did it
Pretty
based off
small
of
thing, but I don't know.
like the AO or the AR number, but
Thank you very much.
yeah.
Okay. So the next item is a discussion of the state has draft regulations for on-site consumption, and I think we all have that. And then we printed out something that Dean had sent out in July that just outlines what our smoking rules are regarding marijuana and also tobacco smoke. You guys get that? Kathy, did you get that?
No, so thank you.
So, thoughts? Oh, it's Dean? Let's, so I just want to get clear, but this is out for 60-day review. We're probably on day 20 or not even that.
It just came out, so we're still pretty far away from the 6-month thing. It was, yeah.
Do we have any sense of how, could this be turned on its head with public comments to come in? And because we're dealing with a moving target here, so we can spend a lot of time on this and it could be 80% different 2 months from now.
Yeah.
Is that our experience?
So Jed sent these to me to forward on to the assembly and the committee, because after his discussion, this is kind of what came from the Marijuana Control Board. And I think his intent was to put it out that if the committee had ideas about submitting comments to kind of help shape the way we want to deal with it, that would be probably this would be a good place to kind of start discussing that. And I know Amanda and the working group got those also and have some plans for getting some stuff together soon. So it's kind of still a very beginning stage.
So would comments come from the committee, or would we write up some comments and then bring them to the full assembly?
That might be a question.
Okay.
For us to decide too. Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, we could all comment individually if we wanted. But I don't know whether we want to comment as a committee or not. I guess we'd have to decide that.
And I think that's the point of today's discussion, is really what is our approach to this question? How are we going to deal with it? What's the public input process? How, all those things.
Can you hear that, Dean? Whoop, you there, Dean?
Hi, Dean here. I heard part of that, yes.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure of any answer either, but I'll figure that out soon. It seems to me like I'm not sure who it was. Any individual could comment and how it's wrong, but as for comments from the municipality, for sure the governing body of the assembly could. I'm not sure about comments coming from subordinate committees or something like that, but I will get to this.
Okay. If we worked up some comments through this committee, then how is that presented for the assembly? That's a question for you, Dean.
Well, the COP's response is the same way, I guess, that licensees are sent to the assembly. You make a recommendation, for example, you could list out the committee's comments and then recommend it to the assembly to send to the AMC, and that's probably not the only way, but that's, I guess, my instinct.
Okay, thank you. So do you want to run through these proposed regulations and tell us if anything jumped out to you? Dean?
Well, I looked through these last week, and there were a couple of, I guess, issues just in terms of how the language would work. And I'm not really ready to run through the regulations, one by one, but I'm happy to listen to what other people think. I think that since we have until the end of October, that we will have a little more detailed discussion about specific parts of the proposed regs at some of our future meetings.
Okay.
So, I have two thoughts. Number
I
one,
think that there was,
sorry, Dean, go ahead.
sorry,
Go ahead.
there was, I guess, one issue I think was, I'm not sure if they have a good division between consumption of smoke-producing type of consumption and non-smoke producing consumption. Maybe there should be a distinction, I guess, that broadly the first part of the regs that requires the consumption area to have a separate ventilation system, a separate secure door, or separated from the rest of the retail area by a secure door, separate ventilation system. I'm not sure you need to require a separate ventilation system if the premises is only allowing edible consumption use and not a smoke-producing type of use. So I guess that's one point that I would make that's an
Well, it looked to me like you can't do. Oh no, you can do edibles. That's right, you did. Yeah. So if you only do edibles, yeah. So marijuana ground bar.
My question is, and I didn't attend the Marijuana Control Board meeting when they talked about this, so my question is, why are they outlawing concentrates? I thought the whole industry is sort of moving in that direction, so I was a little surprised that they had agreed to not allow those.
Well, just, the discussion was that, a lot of these tourists or people that are not as familiar with marijuana are going to come to these unpaid consumptions and take a dab, and it's pretty, it's a pretty intense hit of THC, and there's not really a lot known about how much is delivered when you take a dab hit. It's, anywhere from 70 to 99% potency. So the thought was, let's start slow with on-site consumption. Let's try this first, and then if this goes well, then maybe we'll consider adding in concentrates and dabs into it. So I know it's kind of like a catch-22 because dabs and concentrate pens are vapable, so it's less like secondhand smoke. But on the other hand, it makes you immediately impaired, and some people really aren't have a lot of experience with that, especially people that are visiting from out of the state. So that was the conversation and the concerns that had.
All right, great, thanks.
Any thoughts? I have a bunch of notes on here about things that I requested. It's like, how do we develop any comments we can do? We've done before.
Well, what we've done before, I've never seen a committee recommendation go any other path than first sanctioned through the full assembly and then passed on to some other entity. And that's why I say if I were doing it, I would do exactly what Dean's recommending. When I first read through this, I knew there were things that I wasn't thinking of yet, so I wasn't prepared to actually dissect it today. But I I would take a little bit of time to go back through this and try to develop our thoughts as a committee. And then I would put it forward to the full assembly as a resolution if we have recommendations to go to the Marijuana Control Board, because then it really does have the full weight of the assembly, you know, versus a subsect. I've just never seen an official thing come out of a committee before, but without going through the assembly. So I would do it through an AR. That's how my inclination is.
So developing those thoughts, though, I mean, can we, like at our next meeting that's not packed, is everybody, can we get maybe email to Mandy comments? We'll just have that list of comments, go through it as a committee with Dean. And then kind of winnow through it and see where we land, and then prepare something to go. So, because we have time, and it is a moving target, but we did, I think we have, because we have a couple of meetings, but we have, but the land use plan is going to go to work session. We have on-site stormwater rules, like this, that I believe will come here first, at least one meeting, and
We have
then
3 meetings or 4 between now.
and then we have stream setbacks, but these are just some pretty big issues coming at us that I actually thought we did this in the summer, so I think they're going to stack on each other. So we'll have a few meetings, but this is something I think we can go through the comments. I think we had, if everybody sent everything in prior, we could announce it in the whole assembly, send in your comments, we'll have a meeting, schedule it, and go through it.
So just a quick question for you then. In the previous discussion, when we moved forward the request to the MCD to figure this out, you had asked for the resolution to have a public hearing, even though that's an unusual out of order process. Remember, we had a resolution asking for the MCB to act, and you said, can we at least send this to public hearing so there is a public input, right? And so then that might beg the question, should we think through that process here as well, right? So, because a resolution doesn't by its ordinary order go through a public hearing, but it might be fair to do that, you know, just to ensure that people feel like they have had a voice or, you know.
If we're missing something, others can help kind of catch it. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that sometimes when you solicit help, you think of things that you never, people bring things to you, you just didn't think of. So I don't think that, I don't see how that would be bad, especially with such a big topic like on-site consumption.
And we could schedule that in a time, we could just back up, we could introduce something very vague, right? Just by title, that this would be a resolution regarding on-site consumption regulations. Public hearing 2 weeks later, and if we're not quite ready, as long as we're ready by the public hearing, is that right?
Sure. I mean, you'd have to have something to put out there, even if it was, a draft or.
Well, the draft would be state
That's
rules.
what I was
Yeah,
gonna say. This is
draft
what I would
straight.
assume as the state rules, but yeah, I don't know.
So the public hearing, you'd want at least a week before the deadline for comments, because you might want to change them based on the public hearing.
And actually, a week before the meeting, before the deadline. Right, in case we want to extend, because somebody isn't then ready to act because there were germane questions brought up, and yet we still want action. Right, so really that just pushes back full meeting in advance.
The month, so we have to just chop the month off of our time to respond.
I personally don't have a problem, bringing this back, and when's our next meeting scheduled? Probably not next week, the week after.
We have something.
We have one on the 12th. Are you meeting the committee meeting? Or
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure when this.
Because I would think if we brought this back in 2 weeks, that would give us plenty of time to get everybody's comments in together and look at it, and then, dissect it.
Dean, do you have something?
Yes, I just wanted to mention, in the public notice, the AMCO also said it would receive questions that it would answer before adopting the regs and before the public comment deadline. So if the committee had any questions about the proposed regs, and one of the AMCO would provide an answer, it has to be sent to them 10 days before the end of this public comment period. So since it is October 27th, if the committee wanted to send questions to the AMCO, you might want to plan on that I'm talking about. You need to send them to the AMCO before October 17th.
You want the comments 10 days before the deadline? during our, I think we have questions, we can send them in the committee.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, at any time, so we can meet in a couple of weeks, go through, if we have questions, send them to Jed. Is that right? You got a thought?
No.
Yeah, for example, some provisions are vague and ambiguous. Yeah. Commonly one clarification as to what is your big summary of some provisions.
Okay. Okay, so, next meeting. So, if you send out to all assembly members, say, hey, through the committee, we're gonna develop comments. So if anyone hasn't read it, has comments, send them to you. And then we'll have them ready at our next meeting.
Yep, I can send out.
Put that on there.
I'll let everybody.
And then once you get them all compiled, you can send them to everyone.
Comment table.
And of course, as always, every assembly member is welcome to come to the committee and participate. But I think that'll be a good process. Because it gives everybody a heads up, hey, we're seriously looking at this. If you have real concerns, you should show up at the committee meeting, send your comments, questions, positive remarks, whatever.
So is it something then we should send out to the Federation as well? Request.
Have they been sent, I mean, has this been sent out by
Yeah,
the Federation?
yeah, the general document has been sent out broadly by the Federation from the state, but the question of the Assembly is now looking at this. Would you be interested in making input?
I would just like we did with our cell tower thing, just tell people that the Community Economic Development Committee is reviewing the state proposed regulations, and we're gonna be drafting, comments or proposed changes to those regulations at our committee meeting, say when the committee meeting is, and if people or community councils have comments they want us to consider, I think that's a good idea.
And it's the beginning of the month, we get it to them soon, then they have a month before the final process takes effect in October, so.
And if we have an idea of when, the committee's gonna meet, and then when our public, when we expect this to hit the assembly for public testimony, that's a good idea too. Because that's just like you said, they're kind of on this like month time frame,
Yeah.
so they know, hey, we should be paying attention to the assembly agenda at this time frame, because that's when they're taking additional public comments, because obviously we can go here too.
So our next scheduled meeting is the 14th of September, because we moved the 7th up to today. So if we had questions, that could be all compiled and finalized at that meeting on the 14th, to get it to them by the 17th, if there were any questions. Did you want to schedule any other
By the
meetings?
17th of October.
Oh, sorry.
We have
That's
plenty
right.
of time. Plenty of time.
Well, but the idea is we want to get it before the Assembly, a meeting before.
Oh, of course. She was just talking about the Marijuana Control Board. That's what I say. And so when you're looking out, Andy, for, I'm assuming our proposal for, to have public hearing is probably going to be the first meeting in October. That's what I'm assuming. Just thinking about how our meetings are going to fall. So that gives the community councils basically, I mean, they'll only have one meeting, right? They'll only have one meeting, basically their September meeting, to know they have until the first meeting in October to get their stuff in order.
Yep. So there won't probably be official communications from councils mostly, but only
But they can come next time.
motions or testimony, communications from the executive.
Well, I would make clear too, this is not a substitute for them
No.
making their own comments and sending them in, which to me would be the main thing for community councils to do, write something up on their own, send it to the Marijuana Control Board.
Exactly.
And I can,
Because our process will be later.
we can do kind of an inclusive email with the community councils and let them know the assembly is planning on working on something and encourages the community councils to also comment.
Right, I would definitely do that.
Yeah, because you're exactly right. Whatever the state does, frankly, we can do our own. We will do our own.
We will, we'll have
Yeah,
to.
exactly.
Our process will follow on whatever is formalized out.
And it doesn't mean whatever they do is going to be the same as what we do, clearly.
So we may get, Dean, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to recommend that, since we want the public hearing on proposed resolution comment to assembly, that we might want to target a public hearing date, but recently and have this county's at least some initial recommendations, right? And I think the September 26th assembly meeting or the October 10th assembly meeting, a public hearing on one of those dates would then give the assembly members and this county another chance to look again at what we're recommending and then approve some final resolution at the October 24th meeting and send it to the agency before the 27th deadline. So just kind of thinking about centering this around a public hearing date in front of the assembly.
Could we have something by 9/26? If we meet on the 14th?
Well, I was just thinking, I'm sure we could. I was just thinking for, really to be very clear with the public, I would rather have it kind of sort of hammered out what our issues are and have at least a resolution that we've drafted rather than just this and substitute. You see what I'm saying? Because I think it's easier for people to track if they actually say, this is the document they're voting on, whether they're going to accept. So people can say, you know what, section 2, I don't like how it says this. You know, that's the only reason I was thinking October 10th, because it kind of gives us a lot of time to hammer it out and to get what we think is going to be maybe our final resolution for our recommendations public. You know what I mean? Because I mean, your initial idea of just putting the title and submitting the rest of these and saying we're making a comment, I think it would work, but I think it would be cleaner if we actually had our resolution.
Oh, so that's right. So we would introduce it on the 26th
Yeah.
for a public hearing. Yeah, because that would be early, and that would cut it short.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm thinking the public hearing would be October 10th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would give us 2, yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay. I expect we'll get lots of comments on smoking, respecting our smoking laws here, which is not precisely relevant with this, because that would come as the next step. Once they pass this, we want, and they do have comments in here that you will follow your rules on smoking, so I don't want to get bogged down in that in our comments, except maybe to just say, look at that.
Well, and I think
Don't preempt.
I think Mandy's announcement to the FCC will be important in that, you know, you just make it clear that these are state regulations. After these are passed, we'll have subsequent municipal regulations that will be considered. You know, and at that time we'll do, you know, act on it, right? But basically, just so people know, this doesn't necessarily supersede municipal law.
Or this doesn't even actually create municipal code. This is only a review of the state process, so that we will address the
There will be
municipal
a
code
separate municipal process, yeah.
after.
Yeah, but that all
That's
comes with
important.
her wording, like,
Yeah, that's
separate.
Because we will get a bunch of crazy people. I mean, I got really abused in the last process, and that was just for asking them to do something. I wasn't making any change to anything, so that's truly coming.
Well, our secondary smoke specialist isn't here this morning.
Oh, he'll have a lot to say.
I'm sure he will.
Okay, anything else on that?
We should pass it.
John?
Oh, sorry.
Miss a meeting.
That's what happens in this.
Don't miss a
Nope.
meeting.
Not on your process, and I don't mean to interrupt your discussion of that if you're not concluded. But I was struck by something curious in the draft regs, and since Jana seems familiar, I thought I'd just ask it out loud. So, now is a good time. About 6 pages in, item number 7, and the pages aren't numbered, but it's the things you can't do. This one says you can't deliver marijuana or marijuana product to a person already known to be in possession of marijuana or marijuana product that was purchased for consumption on the premises. And that struck me as curious. That's like, say I went into a store and bought a comic book to read in the store. You can't now sell me a second comic book. But if I want one to take home, I should buy that one first, and then I can turn around and buy. Just didn't make any sense to me, so I don't know if you have any insight on it. Sorry to catch you cold.
I think that the intent of that is, if somebody comes into an on-site consumption area, and it's like buying a drink, right? So you have 2 drink maximum, like when you're going to a concert, you can buy 2 drinks. So if I go to the front of the line of the drink area and I buy 2 drinks, and And then I look at them and I turn around and I hand them to a friend and I turn back and I said, 2 more drinks. That's, I think, what they're trying to capture.
Okay.
Is like, because there's limits to how much quantity in the on-site area you can buy. So I don't think it's saying that you go into the regular retail store and you go buy regular products, put it in your extra packaging, and you have your extra packaging, and then you go into on-site. You can still purchase on-site marijuana to consume, but I think what they're trying to capture is, listen, bud tenders or bartender / bud tender, whatever you are, if you know that this person has already purchased marijuana for on-site consumption and they, purchased their limits, then you can't sell them more just because you don't see it in their physical possession at that moment.
Okay.
It's probably not that fair, which is maybe a good thing for public comment to write it.
That's actually a question before turning to advance. That's an area, hey, can we have some clarification on what your intent on number 7 on this section?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
they can
that's-
get back to us with a response to that within 10 days, then we can know.
That's what I was thinking, is that it says earlier in there, you're allowed to sell 1 gram of marijuana product for on-site consumption. So somebody buys one and then decides they want to go get another one or a different one or whatever, they're not allowing them to do that because they don't want someone to get so impaired that they can't drive or walk or whatever. At least that's kind of what I was looking at.
I appreciate the clarification. I certainly didn't get it from reading the words. We don't want to restrict comment.
Yes, thank you. Well, now I am speaking for Trinity Community Council. When we were first highly encouraged by Assemblyman Dick Training for every council to get involved with this community marijuana approval and consumption and stores and so forth. Trinity did, even though we knew it was unlikely an establishment would probably end up within our boundaries. So that's why you see us continuing to follow this, because we took positions on numerous things. And one was on-site consumption at that time, knowing that that's a potentially thing that would come up at some point, which it now has. And we strongly oppose any on-site consumption. And so we're on the record for that, just so you know what Trinity Community Council is. And we have reasons for that. You brought up about that kind of opening the door with regard to the current ordinance that prohibits tobacco smoking, public tobacco smoking. And I had cancer. I don't know why I've had oral cancer. I've never smoked or chewed tobacco in my life, but I know it's hell to go through. So I've been anti-tobacco for a long time. And my dad was a smoker. And, we got heart disease. He had quadruple bypass. And they almost died twice. Or he was in the hospital for 2 months. There's reasons why it's a bad thing. And I was exposed to all that secondhand smoke growing up in my home. And maybe that's why I got a little cancer. I have no idea. But the point is that even though I am so anti-tobacco, it's not even funny. If this goes through at a municipal level, or even a state level, which would be really unfortunate, but then at the municipal level, that you don't consider completely banning and not allowing on-site consumption in Anchorage, but just tweaking the state's proposal that you end up allowing it, then if I were a tobacco advocate, the very next day, I'd be on the phone with the mayor saying, we need to get the code amended so that now, if you're going to allow marijuana smoking on site, we want you to open back that door and allow tobacco smoking on site. And I think that would be a huge, really regrettable step backwards for this community. And that was one of the reasons that our council felt that why you shouldn't open that door back up, open the door for marijuana, because tobacco will step back in. That was our discussion back then. So just so kind of you're aware, yes, I think you will get a lot of kickback on even concerning this. But you guys already did pass a resolution or whatever document you would call it back a few weeks ago to the Marijuana Control Board, and saying that yes, we support on-site consumption. You didn't have a public hearing. Thank you, Amy, for we've already sent the message to the state that this municipality supports on-site consumption. That concerns me. And I don't know what impact that now has on your body and then ultimately the assembly again when you're actually submitting comments on the state regs now that they're on paper. How that works, because the state marijuana control board might just go, well, Anchorage already said they support on-site consumption. So, I've got a problem with that, and I think that could be kind of tricky because you're already on record supporting it.
Okay, I have a question from Dean and then I think Chris. Dean, did you have a comment?
I was just going to mention the concerning secondhand smoke ordinance and how these proposed regs would work. I'm not sure the page number. I think it's page 4 of the subsection C1C about isolation from other areas. Subsection the middle includes the free area for public monitoring and marijuana consumption area. Is considered separation for employees. But I just wonder how that's going to work. I think we should look at that closely. Some hypotheticals, how that would work, especially if an employee needs to ask someone to leave with an overall intoxicated, for example, or in violation of some of the prohibitions. So just an issue I wanted to spot when we're talking about secondhand smoke.
Okay, thank you. Chris, on that resolution, did we recommend that we have on-site consumption, or did we recommend that marijuana control board make a decision?
That's what we asked for.
Just that they make a decision?
We asked, well, what we said was we're having problems in the downtown and that we need clarity. So that was the gist of the resolution. We did not take a position that said we want public consumption. That just wasn't what was before us. And so we definitely asked them for clarity, make a decision because they were dealing with the question.
So we asked them to basically do this.
Yeah.
And they did.
And that'll give us an opportunity to.
There you go.
The marijuana control board just kept kicking the can down the road, and they kept saying, we're going to get to that. We'll be talking about that one of these months, and then they never did. And so I think that was the reason that I felt that we passed that resolution to tell them, give us something. Let us know what the plans are eventually. The sooner the better.
My feeling was the same as Kathy's. It was sending a signal to me that the Anchorage Assembly encouraged on-site consumption. That was the feeling I got. And clearly, let's not pussyfoot around. Right. We all know it was a nudge to try to get them to allow on-site consumption.
And for me, you're right.
And it was done right before their meeting. So I think Kathy's 100% right. It was a little, go ahead and let us do the on-site consumption. That's how I felt. And again, this is a totally two different issues. I think Kathy's right when it comes to that, because I think it clearly worked, because now they're going for on-site consumption. But now we have to figure out our process just to weigh in. So I don't want to get muddled down in that.
I would just add that what we were facing at that moment was a bunch of screaming angry downtown business people who were saying, get this out of our parks. That's the deal that I was dealing with and addressing in the question. Get this out of our parks. We can't have this in our parks, because that's what's happening. And so it wasn't, and the AMCO was dealing with the question that was on their agenda. We were just saying that we support this conversation because we need to come up with clarity on what our intent is, how we're going to deal with this. And now is the time.
Okay. So I guess to recap, we will encourage all assembly members to send comments to Mandy in time for her to compile them for our September 14th meeting. We will go through them September 14th, and with the goal of winning them out to a resolution, which will be introduced on 9/26 for public hearing on 10/10. We will let community councils know that this is a opportunity to pay attention, though they should put in their own individual comments to the state. And then public hearing 10/10, presumably we'll come up with something fairly soon after that and send that into the state.
Well, the idea is on the 10th, if we have a document that we're prepared to move forward, that's what we communicate. If it comes back with recommended amendments from the body, then we have on the meeting on the 24th and a possible committee meeting between the 10th and the 24th to address concerns that might be brought up by the body. So we leave ourselves a pretty broad window there.
And that would give us the perfect, I mean, if we had to come back to a second assembly meeting, October 27th is when we have the deadline to submit comments, but frankly, we'll see a lot of this, and if, a lot of times we know the issues before people even testify, they'll send us an email or let us know, so assembly members could amend the resolution on the floor too. So, I mean, we have lots of options, and I think that's a timeline that is very workable, but it gives the public the opportunity to see clear product and understand what they're commenting on.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Does that work? Okay, good. Anything else?
This is Dean.
Dean?
Oh, yes, I just wanted to mention that regardless of whatever state regulations say, the municipality would need to amend our code, I'm sure you're all aware, but we can be different, we can be more restrictive here, we can ban on-site consumption entirely, or be more restrictive with the quantity that's allowed to be sold for consumption on site, for example, 5 grams instead of 10 grams. So just being aware for whatever the final rates look like, utility, and our code amendment for on-site consumption under the municipal license can be more restrictive or expanded entirely. So we always have that coming next step once these specs are finalized.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? We done?
In general.